cocky. She's gaining confidence.
Which is 5 times the amount that it would need to warrant a response from the White House.
Ooh, look. She's got a little lilt there. Got a little lilt. Snap, snap. Guess what? That would mean anything if everything that she just said was not factually incorrect. So it brings us to this week's What a Piece of All right, we're going to talk about, it's always a short, people get jarred if you're listening on audio, sorry. But we're going to get to the Equality Act, but this whole speech, let me just rattle this off. First, Ms. Swift, you're not actually wearing a watch, right? So when she does the looking at the watch, I understand you're trying to be funny, it's like a 4-year-old, just, this was obviously premeditated, put on a watch. Second, the White House only has to respond if you submit a petition through whitehouse.gov. Yours was a change.org petition. And you didn't even address it to the White House, you addressed it to the Senate. Sweetheart. And by the way, even though we know that you've ditched all of your people and teardrops in your guitar and you're going for the pop world now to hang out with people like Lena Dunham, you didn't have to throw your dad under the bus and have him delete all of his social media just because he happens to be a Republican. Piece of move. And by the way, you're a cute girl. How much makeup you're wearing these? You're looking more and more like a tranny. And by the way, don't take my word for it. John Travolta was clearly confused. And he sleeps with a lot of trannies. And do you always have to act, Taylor Swift, we're going to get to the equality, but you always have to act like you're surprised every time you win an award. This is like, what, your 42nd award? It's not a Grammy. It's an MTV award for a music video, which is the most played, most popular video of the year. What? I don't know what to say. I don't know, but you know what? I do have a petition that has more than 5 times. Shut up, Taylor Swift!
She had this look on her face like someone just said, all finished with the abortion, Miss Swift.
You're
ready to go. I'm so thrilled.
That is cruel. What do you think, Gerald B? All right, on to the Equality Act and why it sucks. This is one of those things that sounds good, right? The Equality Act. You set up the doll. By the way, I love the crappy golf shirt. He really captured the essence. And G. Morgan Jr., by the way, is doing his back surgery went well. We love you, Gerald. Just get off the pain pills. We don't want you to be like the DC guy yelling, "Eat my butt." This sounds good. The Equality Act, just like pro-choice, sounds good. The Green New Deal. Actually, that doesn't even really sound good. That does sound a little bit authoritarian. You plan to see people doing a goose step when it's the New Deal. But, I get it. The point is, this sounds good. And she said the bill basically means that everyone gets treated equally. No. Let me get into the Equality Act and why it's incredibly dangerous and corrosive, okay? The bill prohibits, to quote it exactly, discrimination on the basis of sex, gender, identity, and sexual orientation. Okay, I understand discrimination based on sex. I understand sexual orientation. Get it. Key takeaway here, though, is gender identity. It's not defined at all in any real way when you look at the bill. So someone can just identify as a woman, and federal law demands that everyone treat them that way. That's a problem. Bill, do you see some of the complications?
So this is one of the things people think. They go, oh, well, I'm just going to put a law into place and decide it's going to be easy. Oh, I want equal rights. I mean, obviously, that's not what the rule, what the law is about. You've already said that. But when you actually have to apply it, how are you going to apply something so undefined and malleable as gender identity? I mean, everyone has a problem with just even understanding, okay, so if I decide to change today, if Trump decides he wants to identify as a woman, is it now we have our first woman president, everyone's going to run to his backing? Of course not. And yet, these are the types of laws that are supported that don't actually talk about how you're actually going to apply it in real life.
Right.
They just want to stay in the high level in the clouds, and then when someone goes, well, I'd actually like a little bit of structure there to know how we're going to follow the law, they start saying,
don't you know you're not supposed to hate half Asian
exactly.
Bill? It's wrong to hate.
No
That's
question.
the problem. By the way, it's not as though there isn't any precedent for this, because we can see some complications. So how would allowing anyone to identify however they want potentially be a problem? In other words, why would anyone be opposed to the Equality Act? No one's opposed to equality. That's not what we're talking about. So let's start with this. One reason, women's sports. We've already covered how transgenderism destroying women's sports. Yeah. You have male to female transgender athletes winning world cycling championships. And people say, well, that's an isolated incident. No, winning national championships in weightlifting. Smashing 4 powerlifting world records in a day. And by the way, a biological male is now the #1 ranked NCAA women's track star. Trans athletics, where men get everything and women get consistent beatings. It's the Islam of sports. Also, in a recent meet, this is important to note, said transgender was ranked first nationally, and in a meet, someone placed second, respectively, was also a transgender. For the record, the race included exactly 2 transgender competitors. How many? 2. Where were they ranked? #1 and 2.
That's harsh.
Men just have an unbelievable advantage. Testosterone. We've gone through this: higher bone density, greater lung capacity, higher ratio of fast twitch muscle fibers. But we're going to have to throw this out because someone wrote a college thesis. And Taylor Swift has an imaginary watch. And this is something important to note. People say, well, we're going to deal with sports when we get there. And this is something, and I would like your opinion here on this, Bill, but they say we can make a provision for sports. Actually, no, you can't. If it's the law, sports have to follow the law. Now, they can add to it in certain ways. For example, like the Nevada State Athletic Commission. You see this a lot with UFC when they had this whole testosterone issue going on. It's legal. People can procure testosterone. But the sports organization can say, all right, we don't want to use that because of an unfair advantage. But if a law specifically says you cannot prohibit in any way someone who's on testosterone, they can't do it. It's not left open-ended here. That's the challenge that I see.
I mean, one of it's again, when you get into the actual practical application of, we've talked about this in the First Amendment, if you actually put a definition of hate speech and then you try to apply it, it falls apart immediately in almost every example. It's the same way with trying to define gender identity and say, it's not just the whatever, it's the whenever, right? So someone can say, well, I am, of 97,000 different versions apparently that exist in gender identity, I'm going to cycle through them like t-shirts every single day. The rest of the world catch up. And if you don't, it's a crime. Right? You're liable civilly to have to pay money or fines or maybe even go to jail or all those types of things. At the very least, to be pilloried in social media if you can't actually keep up with the changing, fluid gender identities. And that's a problem. In the same way, when you talk about discriminating against folks in a certain way, you have to be able to define what the discrimination is. And when one of the biggest proponents of it, Taylor Swift, can't even define it, I'm loving the music, but stick to it. Don't try and go to the law.
You just think I should shut up and sing? Pretty much, yeah. So you just think you don't want to hear my political opinions? Yeah, let's go with that.
Yes.
That's not why you were hired. That's not why you're here. We don't really care. We don't really want to hear that. And by the way, you're wrong. I mean, is it discrimination to say, you know what? You can't do the hormones. What? But that's what helps me compete. My point exactly. By the way, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed because apparently subscriptions don't mean a whole lot. New video every day. Just bookmark the page, check in. And of course, we have hours and hours of content at Mug Club if you join up livebetter.com/Mug Club. And there's the Crowder Bits channel on YouTube if you want to see clips and you want to be able to search them pretty quickly. Another reason here, too, when we talk about the equality bill, women's only spaces. This is something that has turned a lot of feminists against others. So, it's turned lesbian angry sister against blue-haired pseudo-lesbian sister. And that's sad. The bill let me read from the bill. With respect to gender identity, an individual shall not be denied access to a shared facility, including a restroom, a locker room, and a dressing room. That is in accordance with the individual's gender identity, which again is not defined. Even without laws like this, there have been tons of cases of sexual assault, rape, when male to female transgenders have been allowed to go into women's only spaces. But I'm not saying that always happens, that every transgender is a sexual predator. But most recently, we had Jessica Yaniv, who used these protections in Canada to try and gain access to underage nude girls, and was
Still
champion.
trying.
Yeah, still
trying to do it.
Still trying.
Still going. Yeah, well, maybe they're not all predators, but I'm not exactly mystified at how many of them are sexual deviants. I mean, they pretty much have their identity focused on their sexual deviancy, or at least their gender deviancy.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't say, exactly, gender. You can't choose your sexuality, but you can choose your gender. That's the new thing. By the way, show me your tits. That's Jessica Yaniv. That's what she's getting into these changing rooms. Like, can you help me? But can you help me use my tampon? No, I think you should be locked up.
No, not at all.
I think you should be in Buffalo Bill's well.
Well, you think about the subjectivity, though, right? Like again, and I don't say though as to be a rebuttal, but I mean, think about it's actually worse. I mean, it's worse than that when you think of the practical application of saying, okay, well, hey, I'm going to go to the women's restroom today, and later in the day, I'm going to go into the men's restroom, and then actually later after that, I'm going to go back in the women's restroom, right? In all of the places that, for example, I mean, I know a number of women who actually consider the women's restroom to be a safe space, right? Right. So regardless of whether it is or it isn't, you're going to take one person's subjective view of a place where they can go, they can feel safe, and frankly, if you've ever been in a women's restroom, it's always nicer than a men's restroom.
Every time.
And now you're going to say...
I've heard the opposite. I've heard that it gets even messier.
It gets messy, but they start off really clean and nice. Sometimes they have couches.
Oh,
really?
They almost often have couches and flowers and scent machines.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Couches?
Yeah,
I've seen
couches.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
I've snuck in there once.
But like you go
The
in
couches are very porous, very permeable.
they
It's
have their
gross.
clothes on.
I don't know. I feel like that couch. It's like if you have a couch in a cigar lounge, it's always going to smell like that. No matter where you can sell it on Craigslist. It doesn't matter. I feel like
That's
that.
Well, it's not a white couch.
All right. Okay.
The couch in the bathroom will smell like it.
All right.
But But the idea being is that, okay, if you have a subjective view of what should be great, and you're going to have these women who say the safe space that I have in the restroom to be able to go there and not worry about men being around, to be able to cry or to do my makeup or to do whatever, I adjust my dress. Now I have to say under this rule, pillow fight, maybe we're lucky, but now it just doesn't matter, right? Like take all the signs off, anyone can go anywhere.
And this is important because it's not based in science at all. Gender is really it's really more grammatical. How is it? We've talked about this before. Simone de Beauvoir. You go to the John Money study, right? You get to Judith Butler. This is a very new idea. Even people who believe that gender was socially constructed and separate from sex, they still only believed in two genders. And this is not scientifically based. It was never proven. It's just theory. It was theory that was supposed to be talked about in college because it didn't really matter, have real-world consequences, like most things that are talked about in humanities courses. And then for some reason, people weren't in on the gag, like, let's just open up the floodgates. And even the professors themselves, like, what? No, it was a goof. It was a goof. So here's another reason, by the way, with this bill, they're going to be targeting religious organizations, business owners. The Equality Act prohibits against any kind of discrimination, as they put it, against LGBTQAAIP people from the bill. Any establishment that provides a good, a service, a program, including a store, shopping center, online retailer, or service provider, salon, we'll get back to that, bank, gas station, food bank, service, or care center, shelter, travel agency, funeral parlor, or establishment